Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carasoft on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is Chris Townsend, the Vice President of Federal for Symantec. Now, Chris, before break, we were talking about, you mentioned the cloud, and you mentioned this idea of on-prem and cloud and how a lot of agencies are going to be having systems and data and networks that kind of are going to be dual. It's the parallelness of moving to the cloud takes some time. Is this adding that additional complexity to this cybersecurity challenge, or is that the short-term view and the long-term view is the cloud's really going to take away a lot of that complexity?
It's a good question, Jason, and it's a little of both. So as we initially move to the cloud, if we don't get this right initially, it can cause a lot of additional complexity. Again, we need to figure out how to extend the on-premise security policies to the cloud. And we really need to start to shift our security enforcement to the data and the application itself and have our security policy follow the user, no matter whether the user accesses that data direct to net on a government furnished device or a non-government furnished device. And that's really a significant shift in how we implement security today. Now, if we take the same approach to security that we've taken on-prem, where we buy a bunch of disparate tools and all of them reside in a separate cloud environment, if you could imagine that, it'd be chaos, right? You'd be bouncing back and forth from cloud provider to cloud provider before you ever got to your applications, and that's not going to be sustainable. Likewise, if you buy security from each one of the SaaS or IaaS providers, it's software as a service or infrastructure as a service. If you buy their particular tool set, now you've got multiple security policies and systems that you have to manage. Our vision is to build a integrated cloud security control point that is extensible from your on-prem environment. So now you have a single security control point for both your on-prem environment and your cloud environment that's fully integrated. And that was our vision when Symantec acquired Blue Code and acquired the CASB platform and acquired our web isolation platform, is to bring all those systems together in a standards-based manner to give you that range of on-prem to hybrid to cloud in a single architecture.
The way you described it, I would say, gives me a little bit of worry, right? Because you made, I think, a very fair point that says you don't want one set of security policies and tools under your SaaS and one set of under your IaaS and one under your PaaS. But now you're saying, let's put a platform and help me put a finer point on this. Put this kind of thin layer of security above everything. So aren't we creating just another trusted internet connection, which is a problem? We'll get to that in a second, I know, but it was just a problem in and of itself that it becomes this, if you will, hindrance to get into your cloud. Help me understand.
Again, great question. The trusted internet connections, when they were first conceived, were absolutely the right solution at the right time, right?
And I'm going to jump in, and it wasn't for the cloud. We weren't even talking about the cloud back in 2007, 2008. So with all due respect to our friends in OMB, go ahead.
That's right. So when the TIC, Trusted Information Connection, was first conceived, it was really to reduce the attack surface, consolidate connectivity to the internet so you knew where your internet connections were, and make sure that they were all going through a common security architecture, a standard that was developed by OMB and DHS. And it was very successful. It solved the problem. But as now we're moving more toward the cloud, the current TIC architecture doesn't do a good job of supporting direct-to-net connectivity to the cloud. It forces users to hairpin back through their agency network, usually with a VPN connection, and then go back out to the cloud, which breaks a lot of the improved productivity and agility that the cloud promises. I'm certainly not saying that we need to build a new TIC stack, if you will, although I think if looking ahead, TIC 3.0, and we're doing a lot of work today with OMB and DHS to modernize that TIC architecture to support a direct-to-net connection and to extend the on-prem controls that are necessary from the TIC into the cloud, and then augment that TIC environment with cloud-based controls like CASB, for example, that has API integration into Office 365 or ServiceNow or Salesforce or Oracle Cloud, the other cloud applications that are out there, so you can start to extend your security controls into those cloud environments and protect that data where the data lives. What I'm saying in terms of a common platform to connect securely to the cloud is we don't want to have multiple security stacks. We want a single cloud-based architecture. And again, it doesn't have to be all Symantec, but we need to have again, using the ICDX fabric or some other standards-based approach to integrate these systems and not have a bunch of disparate systems sitting out in a cloud environment.
And I think that helps because one of the things you don't want people to walk away from our conversation on is going, oh, great, here's another vendor saying, put more tools in front of my ability to get to the cloud. And that being said, the reason why these tools have got to be, you're calling for this more standard architecture, the standard framework, is because of where the security has to happen today. It used to be protect the perimeter, the old, walls and gates and moats, and now it's all about the data. So maybe talk a little about how this is also getting us toward really the focus on where the data resides and the data itself, protecting it from hackers and attackers.
Yeah, your data is not sitting in a locked data center anymore behind a steel door with biometric authentication, right? Your data is now sitting in a cloud environment, and it's sitting in Microsoft and Amazon, and that's okay, right? It allows the data to be more easily accessed and more usable, and that's fine. But we have to evolve the way that we're implementing security around that data. And knowing that it's not sitting in a hardened data center someplace, we need security systems and tools that secure that data where that data lives. And you talked earlier about identifying your high value assets. You talked about technologies like data loss prevention. We need to do a better job of making sure we understand, and our agencies need to do a better job of making sure we understand what our high value data is, how to identify that high value data, and how to secure that high value data when it's outside of our perimeter. Because federal agencies, go back to accountability, federal agencies are still accountable for protecting their data, even if that data is sitting in a FedRAMPed data center environment for a SaaS or IaaS provider, right? There's still that accountability in making sure that data is secure.
And I think that has been really drummed into agencies' brains over the last maybe 3, 4, 5 years, that just because it's in a FedRAMP approved, moderate level security stack, you still have ultimate responsibility. And that kind of takes me down the path of something you mentioned earlier is, shift the enforcement to the data, to the app itself. What you're talking about in many ways is the old roles and responsibilities when it comes to authentication, verification of the identity of the user. Does Chris Townsend have access to this data? If so, can he read it? Can he write it? Can he change it? Is that part of this, if you will, cloud, this security framework we're starting to talk about, the roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we secure the data and then we make the security policy extensible so it follows the user around no matter what device that user's using to access the data or where they're accessing the data from, now certainly identity management becomes critically important to make sure that user is who they say they are. The other piece that we're implementing, for example, in our cloud access security broker technology, we have API integration with all of the SaaS or the majority of the large SaaS providers and IaaS providers. We can do behavioral analytics in the cloud environment. So if you've got a user that accesses a piece of data in a Microsoft Office 365 environment, and they are accessing a different segment of the environment than they normally would, or pulling down a large amount of data on a non-government owned device in a remote location, we can flag it, report it, block that behavior. So being able to do behavioral analytics on the user actions in the cloud environment is going to be critically important, as well as in addition to augmenting better identity management.
So we've spent a lot of time talking about this broad idea of we got to change, reduce complexity. We have to have standards. Where is it happening in government? Is there any examples you can provide, or even in industry, maybe some customers? And even if you can't be specific of the customer, maybe just give me a sense of is this already happening?
Well, I'll say this. The message is certainly resonating. When I was out at RSA a few months ago, every meeting I had with our federal leaders, almost across the board, everyone's in agreement that we need a new approach, and we need more of a standards-based model. We need to see more integration. We need the better automation in the tools. We hear a lot about machine learning and AI, and they're great buzzwords right now, and most vendors have some ML and AI capability in their systems. But if you can't apply that broadly across your security environment, you're really limited in the benefit of those technologies. And I think what we're really talking about when we talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence is really building an automation across the tool sets. And I think every CISO out there that you'll talk to, and I don't want to certainly talk on behalf of all the CISOs out there, but I think they would all say they'd like to use more automated tool sets across their environment to reduce the burden and the noise on their security operators, right? They have very limited security operations resources, and how do you make those folks how can you make those folks more effective? Let's limit the noise that they have to deal with every day, and we can do that through more intelligent tools. But that comes with integration and automation, and industry working more closely together and working more closely with our government customers.
When I talk to chief information officers, when I go to panels or CISOs talk, a lot of times you hear about this automation orchestration piece and how important it is. I'm not sure how many are starting to use it. I think there's a lot of pilots, a lot of tests. Do you get a sense that agencies are interested, but maybe they're a little hesitant, or are the tools not quite ready for them, or what's happening in the market today?
Well, we've been driving this idea of integrated cyber defense now at Symantec for the past year and a half. And, you talk about examples of where we're seeing it implemented. Because of the procurement cycles in the government, because of the evaluation cycles in the government, because of the size and complexity of a lot of our government systems, because of the proprietary legacy applications and systems, it's just going to take longer to roll that approach out. But I'll give you an example. We had a large financial customer. I can't name who it is, but they invited us in and they said, hey, the ICDX approach, the platform approach makes a lot of sense. Here are all the security vendors that we're using in our environment. Come in and prove to us that you can consolidate these vendors. Show us where you can consolidate them. Come in and then prove it in our lab. And if you do, the capital expense savings and the soft cost savings over the long term, the improved operational efficiency, reduced total operating cost and total cost of ownership, and the improved security posture is well worth the investment. And they did. They standardized across the board where they could on the Symantec platform and saved tens of millions of dollars in a very short period of time by doing that and increase their overall security posture. So the answer is yes, we're seeing this outside of federal, and we're beginning to see the adoption with our federal customers as well.
That's a great example. I really appreciate it because I think so many times we talk about these things, but okay, who's really doing it? So thank you for that. Chris, this has been a fascinating conversation. We're almost out of time. Before I let you go, talk maybe a little bit about what's the takeaway. Agencies aren't at zero. We know that. They're not at 100 either. So how to get started on this? What's some of the first steps? What are some of the things that you're seeing that agencies need to be aware of that maybe, hey, here's a pothole to avoid?
Yeah, Jason, it all starts with a plan, right? And again, I would encourage all of our agency leads and my industry partners and competitors out there. We need to sit down and have a better dialogue, and instead of us, the vendor community showing up and saying, "Hey, buy this latest greatest tool," and our customers keeping us kind of at this arm's length. Hey, we're the customer, you're the vendor. Let's sit down and talk about the challenges that we're trying to solve, the evolution that the agencies are trying to move toward the cloud and move toward secure mobile, and work more closely with the vendor community out there and bring competitors together in a conference room and force them to work together and start to solve these problems. And then we need to develop a plan. So, here's where you are today. You have all these fragmented tools. Where can you consolidate? Where can you save costs? Where can you become more operationally efficient? And let's put together a 3-year plan to work toward over time. And if we execute on that plan together, again, using this idea of buying down risk and identifying high value assets and consolidating tools and improving operational efficiency and driving down cost, we'll get there. But we need to take a more strategic approach to the problem.
All right, excellent advice. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today. Let me thank my guest, Chris Townsend, the Vice President of Federal for Symantec. Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate the time.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carasoft on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsradio.com and search innovation.